EXP, I told him I could play one on TV, but I don't like technology that much. I actually like the sales side of the business a lot more. I politely turned him down. He called me back the next week and said I wasn't expecting a no. So he said, come hang out with me for a day. I told him I was probably going to start another company. I've never had a job, by the way. This is my first job. And he said, why don't you hang out with me for 6 months until you have your next idea, and then when you're ready to start your next company, I can invest in it. 6 months into being at EXP, he calls me one day and he's like, hey, did you know you're already running the company because you're touching this and you're doing that? So you're going to be the chief strategy officer. And I said, okay. 6 months later, he asked me to be the CEO. I politely turned him down. I said, I'm having fun being the fun uncle. I've been the dad my whole career. I'd rather be the fun uncle. Then 6 months later, he asked me again. We were actually at the Watermark next door. And I said, I'm good. I like this setup. And then that takes us to March 15th of this year, right? And I was actually, again, fishing in the Keys with a couple agents, because that's what I like to do when I have some personal time. And I get the email that NAR settled, right? And I started getting an overwhelming amount of text messages from agents who were really worried more than anything. And so I spent the weekend on the phone with our attorneys and Glenn and a whole bunch of other people. And that's when I decided to go on a live on March 18th. Some of you may have seen it. I think we had 54,000 concurrent viewers. And we decided to get loud and take a position on the argument. A week later, I got a call from Glenn again. He goes, you're the CEO. I was like, wait, let's talk about it. He goes, no, you don't get it. You are the CEO. We filed the paperwork. We told the board. Here are the keys. Congratulations. So again, the only reason I'm CEO is because NAR something happened. Because I was very happy not being the CEO. But it's one of those moments in life, and my whole career has been moments of life where I made a decision. And I'm probably the only CEO who says this publicly. I completely disagree with the settlement. I think it was a bunch of nonsense. I think the best analogy is we all turned 16 years old, we got driver's license, and we went 65 miles an hour on the highway, and then somebody pulled us over and said we're a bunch of criminals. We operated with empathy and fiduciary responsibility with the framework we were given. I think a bunch of ambulance-chasing attorneys saw a payday and came after our industry. But life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. So, I am big mad with you, but it's over. Like, we settled as well. And what I do know for a fact is that 4 to 7 million American families choose to move every year. And so the decision that all of us are collectively making is, do I still want to serve families in this noble profession? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, these are the new rules of engagement we have to deal with to limit liability for ourselves and our customers. Yes or no? Yes. So, right now, we're in what I've been calling the messy middle. And before, like 3 months ago, I'd never really talked to media. In the last 45 days, I've done 75 media interviews. And one of the things that I'm trying to make sure that consumers know, because one of the biggest problems we have is that the media is very interested in this. And what we know is the media likes to make these headlines that are salacious and exaggerate, like, no one needs to pay buyer's agents anymore. It's like, oh no, that's not what they said. That's not what's going on. And so I've taken it upon myself to go on national media and correct that narrative for them. But what I do want you to know, and what I really invite all of you to have, is a lot of grace with each other. Because yes, please. Yeah. Because we are a cooperative industry, which is unique to anything else I've seen on the planet. And I say the planet because I have a different vantage point. We operate in 24 countries. I'm the single largest brokerage on the planet. And outside of the US and Canada, we don't have this beautiful system. And it is not fun, guys. In the south of France, where I spent a week in the summer with a bunch of agents at a mastermind, one of our agents told me it takes 8 to 10 websites to get a picture of what the total inventory looks like. and no one cooperates with each other, right? So it's really important to protect the industry we have and cooperate in the best way possible. And so what I promise you is we will get to a new normal. When? We can all take guesses. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 18 months. And so while we're in this messy middle, it reminds me of 2008, 2009, 2010. Like the amount of stuff, raise your hand if you sold real estate back then. More than half of you, good. So if you remember, like if we think stuff's changing every week right now, do you guys remember when like banks would disappear over the weekend? And you'd be having breakfast and you see the news and you're like, wait a second, I have a closing on Monday with that bank. We laugh now, but it wasn't funny then. And technically, on Monday, you could have put that buyer into default, couldn't you have? And taken their deposit. But they had already packed up their family and were effectively homeless because their rent back was due on Sunday and we were supposed to close Monday. And I recall doing deals with you guys, and what we did is we found them a new lender. We extended that contract, and we found them where to live in between. Right, so this is not a, I know more than you, and you know less than me. This is like, let's get to the settlement together, right? Our job is to be fiduciaries to our customers. It's not about how much I'm gonna get paid or when I'm gonna get paid. It's let me get this buyer into this home and we will work together to get there.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, from where I sit, it's probably the biggest pain in my ass because each state and each county and each association has a slight different interpretation, right? So all the confusion you guys experience in one market, amplify it times a very big number, and that's what I feel. But everywhere I go, I actually give Ryan and NVAR mad props because your purchase and sale contract is the best one I've seen in the entire country.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, if you guys want a good purchase and sale contract, call Ryan because I think he'll give it to you. Because again, you guys made it really simple. You have a purchase price, financing amount, seller to buyer credit, seller to buyer brokerage, and it right there in writing it says this is a legally binding agreement between the seller and the buyer brokerage that needs to be amended in writing. So effectively, page 1 of your purchase and sale contract is a net sheet. And I love it. Because the rest of the country is not that clear. What has not changed, so at August 17th, we could no longer offer broker-to-broker compensation on the MLS, and a whole bunch of other things, and signed buyer requirements, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because I'm tired of talking about it. I'm sure you're tired of listening to it. But what did not change is what matters. The only thing that matters to a seller is how much money am I going to walk away with from the closing table? Period. We're overcomplicating it. What is the net proceeds I'm going to walk away from the closing table in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of hassle? And buyers, their world hasn't changed either. How many available dollars do I have to bring to the closing table for a payment I can afford? Yes or no?
Yep.
As long as we remember that, it simplifies everything. And if this wasn't complex enough, and I saw that Lawrence is going to talk, so I'm going to try to stay away from all the economic data because if we differ, then one of us gets to be right and one of us gets to be wrong. But what I do know is this year we're on track to have the lowest amount of transactions in guess how many years? About 35 years. Did you hear what I just said? We're going to sell less homes than we did in 2008, 2009, 2010. So, for the people in this room, that's a very confusing feeling. Because when you go to Tyson's or you go to the restaurant and there's a wait and the economy's roaring, it doesn't feel like that for us. Because we're in a recession of transactions, right? And that's the part that I think we forget sometimes. We play a finite game. We do not play an exponential game. If there's X amount of homes and you get more than you feel it, especially when there's this few transactions. So one thing I want you guys to know is there was an Inman survey over the summer that said that 54% of agents were considering switching brokerages. And that's because we're all going, oh my God, something something's wrong. Like, this doesn't feel right. And I think the first question that we all do is look inside and be like, is something wrong with me? Right? Do I need to create drastic change in my life, like chop my hair off or diet or buy a red car? Right? And so the first thing I will tell you to do is, before you go moving brokerages, and I'm in the recruiting business, I'm actually telling you, don't do that. Have a conversation with yourself. Understand, are you down year over year? Because if you're down 5% and the market was down 10%, you guys are actually kicking ass. You're outperforming your market. So it's super important that you understand that nuance, right? Before you go uprooting everything. And if, by the way, 2023 to 2024 is basically going to be copy-paste nationally. Maybe Nova's slightly different, but it's probably going to be flat year over year. That means you just survived the worst it's been since the 90s. I want to clap for that. And by the way, if you're outperforming last year, you're really crushing it right now. So the good news is, rates started here in January and they ended here in December. So my humble prediction, so Lawrence can disagree with me later if he does, is that next year will be better than this year. So last year I stood on a stage in Vegas at our national event, which I'm having. Who's coming to Miami next week? 6,000 of my closest friends are coming to visit me in Miami. But I said 2024 will be copy-paste of 2023. And I got to be right on that one. So hopefully I get to be right on this next one because it's a good prediction for you guys. I think 2025 will be at least a 10% lift from last year, from this year. We need something, right? Yeah. And so there's a couple of reasons. We have a systemic lack of inventory that's coming from 2008, right? So in this country, we need about 1 million new homes being built to keep up with household formation, which is a good thing, right? There's other countries who are in decline in population. And in 2006 and 7, we were delivering like 1.5 million homes. We were overbuilding because people were buying 5 and 6 homes, if you guys remember that. We shouldn't have done that either. Took a couple of years to absorb all that. But we built like 400,000 homes a year for many years after the Great Recession. And so we're short millions and millions of homes in this country. And all the loans we've written since the financial crisis have been fully underwritten. So we don't have any structural financial problems like we once did. But what's happened in the last 2 years is, do you guys know like what percentage of mortgages have a rate below 5% right now? Take a guess. 84. Does that explain a couple of things for you guys? So we don't have enough homes in this country, period, for all the humans. That's the mathematical fact. And then the people with mortgages, raise your hand if you have a sub 3% rate. Mm-hmm. Look around. Hold them up and look around. Doesn't matter how good of a deal you find. Because I'm going to ask you to trade that for a 6% rate. So, the good news is there's always a portion of the population that moves every year. Right? It's the people who rent and get the opportunity to buy. So the one fun stat that is that 18,000 people are turning 35 every single day right now in the country. That's peak buying years. So when you create a household. So there's always a portion of the population whose lease comes up and then does a math problem. And that's where you need to be making sure you're focusing on those people. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there are folks who won't sell their house, but if they're no longer with us, and then their heirs sell their house, or new homes are being built. So new construction has been kind of the shining light in the economy lately for housing. We should be on track to sell about 700,000 new homes this year, over 600 last year. And again, national statistic, don't yell at me if I'm incorrect in Northern Virginia, is that we've gotten very close to parity in resale value and new construction dollar cost. And so builders can do 3-2-1 down buy rates. They can be a lot more aggressive or creative than a traditional homeowner can. So my prediction is we will get some reprieve because interest rates have come down, which helps affordability. But it's not enough to unlock what's called rate lock, right? All those hands that went up, who will say, yeah, I'm not giving up this rate. And by the way, I don't see the rates ever getting that low again in our functional careers. Which again, we probably should have never gone there, and that drove the inflation and all that fun stuff. So, I think the good news is that we are going to have a reprieve next year. To me, the really important thing to remember is we help families find homes. That makes us work in a completely different asset class than every other piece of real estate on the planet. Residential real estate is a storage of human beings. And unlike a commercial building, does anyone want to be owning a bunch of office buildings right now? Unless you get a really, really good deal and you turn it into residential, right? A commercial office building, an industrial warehouse, buildings can sit empty for years at a time. Because we have less properties than families, all you have to do is adjust the price of the rent, and we can get that property occupied. And my closing thought is what you actually do, right? There's been a whole lot of talk about getting rid of us, hasn't there? Mm-hmm. Over the last 10 years, I've witnessed over $50 billion of the smartest money in the world come for us, right, in the form of Open Door and OfferPad and a whole bunch of other companies that no longer exist. And every single one of those companies either went out of business or pivoted to fully partnering with us for the last mile. I don't think we're going anywhere. I think, yes. I think what we do is super important and noble work. The average family moves 6 times in their entire life, 3 times as a tenant and 3 times as a homeowner. The frequency of that number used to be 7 years, and it's up to 9 now. And so every time they go through that, it's highly emotional, it's very expensive, and whatever they experienced last time is different now. True or false? Yeah. Right? I sold close to 4,000 transactions as an agent. When Ariana and I buy a house, I turn into an emotional wreck, just like our customers do. Because it's no longer a transaction. It is where I'm going to raise Natalia Mateo, right? It gets very personal. And so we live in a world today where if you guys wanted to climb Mount Everest, you can research and get ready for that trip all on your own on YouTube. True or false? Yeah. You can see the diet. You can look up all the gear you need to buy. You can do all of it. But when you get to the base of the Himalaya, I highly suggest you hire that local expert that's done it about 400 times. Because they're the ones who are going to hold your hand and carry your gear. And when something comes, they're the ones who are going to be able to tell you, you know what, we should probably make camp and, you know, make sure that that thing goes by before we keep going. Or, oh shit, we got to get down now. Let's go. That's a crack in the foundation. There's water coming in. Like, you know, we don't even want to bid. Like, we just want to get out. Right? So, I fully believe that what you guys do is extremely important. It's extremely noble. But it's up to you to embrace this new change. And you can't have conversations about, but it used to be this way. Because it's no longer this way. Right? We have a new set of rules. You have amazing leadership who is, in my opinion, on the cutting edge of what needs to be done. And I look forward to seeing you guys in 10 or 20 more years. Awesome.